There are some bizarre ads urging pregnant women to come to Canada to give birth, providing their child with Canadian citizenship. To tell us more about it is one of our regular contributors, Brian Lilley, who joins me now from Toronto. Brian, one of the online ads is targeting mainline Chinese mothers saying, the U.S. rejected your visa? No problem. In fact, Canada's better.
Yeah, and the push is, and we've talked about this before, how the idea of birth tourism and the fact that some people want to come to Canada to have their baby. They come, when they're 7, 8, 9 months pregnant. They stay long enough to have the baby. That grants the child automatic Canadian citizenship. And then, well, they go home. The child doesn't live here at all. Oftentimes the father's not even here. It's just the mother comes on their own. It depends on the family situation, but then they go home quickly, but only after they claim Canadian citizenship for the child. The numbers in British Columbia, this is happening across the country, but it is very acute in British Columbia. The numbers have gone up by 24% year over year, according to one study that was published in the Vancouver province, I believe it was. And they're saying, look, this is a problem. You've got an MLA out of the Vancouver area, Richmond area, who says, look, I'm the son of immigrants. I don't like this. This is not people using the system as it was intended. And yet every time this is raised, just like every other question you ask about immigration with this current government under Justin Trudeau, if you ask a question that isn't how many more people can we get in and how fast can we get them here, if you ask any question about the government, you're denounced as a racist. That's wrong. I don't think that Canadians are racist for saying, wait a minute, do we want people coming here just to have their child and then leave again until the child is old enough to come here for cheap university tuition or to get healthcare treatment? No, that's not what this was set up for. That's not what the system is designed for. We need to start thinking about a real solution, given the increasing numbers that the province of British Columbia can show you itself are actually happening.
Now, Brian, despite opposition to a national handgun ban, which would penalize responsible gun owners, the feds are looking at implementing one still?
Yeah, weekend interview, Bill Blair, the Minister of Border Security and Reducing Organized Crime, said he would not rule out anything, including using an order in council. Now, an order in council is a fancy term for a cabinet order. That's it. You need 4 guys in a room. No more, no less. You just need 4 cabinet ministers to sign off, and you can change all kinds of things. But orders in council are not designed for, well, replacing legislation, but they've run out of ramp. They've run out of runway. They cannot bring in a gun ban before the next election. So Blair was asked, would you consider doing an order in council to, do away with certain handguns or certain types of firearms? And he said yes, that keeping Canadians safe is his ultimate goal. And yet the statistics show, Professor Gary Mauser out of Simon Fraser University in Vancouver has looked at this and said, the people least likely to commit crimes, especially crimes with guns, are licensed gun owners. You're more likely to have a police officer commit a crime with a gun than you are your average licensed gun owner, because they know that if they commit any crime, their gun license is gone. And this is their hobby, whether it's hunting or sport shooting, and they don't want to lose that right. They don't want to lose that privilege. And yet to deal with the very real problem that we see in cities across the country of criminals using guns, what is the government looking at doing again? Targeting law-abiding gun owners. It's just like the gun registry, which didn't reduce crime, which cost us an awful lot of money, and how my estimates say if they turn around and let's say they ban the AR-15 rifle, the most popular sporting rifle in the world, we would be looking at between $106 and $137 million to start to compensate those people that we seized their property from due to an order in council, a behind closed door decision that doesn't have any debate, that doesn't have a single vote in Parliament. Is that the way that we should be doing our laws in Canada? Well, more than 900 years of tradition would say no.
Brian, former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould says the actions of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau should be of great concern for many Canadians, and she still wants the opportunity to speak. Now, perhaps she'll only get that opportunity if or when Andrew Scheer becomes Prime Minister?
Yeah, this comes from an interview with my colleague Warren Kinsella, who, she said to him in an exclusive interview that she feels sad, she feels disappointed. How You're a dad. You know that you can be angry at your kids, but that may not always go all that far. But when you're disappointed in your kids, it hurts them. Well, Jody Wilson-Raybould is disappointed in the kid that is our prime minister, Justin Trudeau. She's sad at how he acted. She's disappointed. She still wants to be able to tell the full truth, and she does not have the full hope that Trudeau is going to do the right thing. In fact, they're still talking about giving a sweetheart deal to SNC-Lavalin. So, in her interview with Kinsella, she acknowledged that, hey, if in the future, if she's granted, even if it's by a future prime minister like Prime Minister Andrew Scheer, if we get to that point, she'd be willing to tell the rest of her story, the story that Justin Trudeau so far has barred her from telling.
Brian, speaking of telling their side of the story, former Vice Admiral Mark Norman wants to do the same, and he's in the fight of his life right now.
Yeah, this was, and another one of these interviews where the person at the center of a national drama sits down and spills the beans. But Mark Norman still, because he is a serving military officer, he was, until he was suspended, the second highest ranking member of the Canadian Armed Forces. He was just behind Chief of the Defense Staff General John Vance. He was the highest ranking naval officer in the country. He still has to watch what he says, but he did talk about how watching all of it unfold on TV, including from the time he was suspended until watching for more than a year of the prime minister saying, "This is going to trial. I can't talk about it. Vice Admiral Norman will end up before the courts. I can't talk about it." That was more than a year of the prime minister saying that, and Norman hadn't even been charged. And the prime minister is going out there saying, "This is going to court." He feels that he has been targeted. He feels that he has been mistreated. And I can't say that he's wrong on that, Hal. You look at the track record. You want to compare this, and I did this in one of my recent columns. You want to look at the track record of this government, of the Trudeau government. They worked as hard as they could to interfere in the judicial process when it came to SNC-Lavalin to get them off of charges. And then on the other side, with Vice Admiral Norman, they worked as hard as they could to get him charged, including the clerk of the Privy Council at the time, Michael Wernick, writing a 60-page memo, fingering Mark Norman and saying, "That's the guy that told our cabinet secrets. Let's get him." Is that really the way that our justice system should work? No.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has promised that the provincial carbon tax here in Alberta will be no more as of May 30th. Now we're waiting word of the federal carbon tax to kick in. Brian, a new report from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation says carbon taxes have been applied unequally in different provinces. Can you offer some insight into that?
Well, it depends on how much you support the Liberal Party. It's kind of weird, though, because Ontario in the last federal election elected 80 Liberals. They're down a couple. I think they're at about 78 Liberals in the province of Ontario right now, but Ontario is paying full freight, more than about 4.5 cents a litre on gasoline, just to use as an example. While down in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, where they're electing or had been electing Liberal governments, it's down around a cent. Well, that's a huge difference. I mean, we're paying more than 4 times the freight here. And you in Alberta, just like your neighbors in Saskatchewan, can be expected to pay 4 times the price of what they're paying in Atlantic Canada. And there's a lot of people looking at this and saying, okay, is that the Liberal discount? You vote the right way? If you remember back to the 2015 election, Hal, the Liberals swept every seat in Atlantic Canada. Are they getting a special sweetheart deal now as a result of that? I don't see what the reason could be otherwise. The Prime Minister says we're in the middle of a climate emergency. The Prime Minister says this is the biggest issue facing the country. We need to have a national standard price and not have price leakage. Well, if you're in any kind of organization where you need to be worried about this sort of thing, you're going to be setting up shop in Atlantic Canada, not in Ontario, not in Saskatchewan, not in Alberta.
Brian, a Canadian delegation is pushing for the release of the 2 Canadians who were officially arrested, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. Tell me more about that.
Well, so, this is part of the ongoing fight with China when it comes to these 2 Canadians that were detained for no other reason than they are collateral damage in the fight when it comes to Huawei. Okay, so we arrested Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei CFO, back in December on an extradition request from the United States. They came forward and said she's innocent. China demanded her release. We did not do that. So Michael Kovrig, Michael Spavor, they're facing the consequences. We've also, seen two Canadians have their sentences increased, including one to the death penalty over a drug sentence. We've seen canola farmers, pea farmers, pork farmers, soy farmers, all facing challenges. So there is an increased push by Canadian officials in China now to get these two men released. I can't say that it's going to work, but that's where we're at this point.
Canada's facing increased pressure from the United States to bring home captured Canadian ISIS members. But Brian, the Liberals are resisting over concerns of national security for good reason, and some are returning to Canada to face prosecution.
Well, they know that just like the Harper government before them, there is no way to actually be able to charge these folks. And so what do? You bring them home, they're going to face what? What are the charges? How can you actually bring them to justice? How can you bring them to court? The ability to collect evidence that would stand up in a Canadian court simply is not there. And that's why most of these guys aren't charged. They committed crimes on a battlefield on the other side of the planet, in an area where we don't have police officers, where forensic evidence is not easily collectible. And so they haven't been able to do it. Now, we do know that the Liberals have reached out. They even looked at bringing home Jihadi Jack, is the nickname of the guy from the UK. He has a Canadian father. He's never lived here. He's visited on holiday. They looked at bringing him back and then walked away from that after a public outcry. But Turkey is now saying, we want you to bring these guys back. We'll help facilitate you bringing these guys back from Syria. And the government is looking at it. In public, they are willing to say that, no, nothing has changed. But, I'll take that with a grain of salt, given everything that's happened in the past, Al.
The federal election is not that far away now, just over 5 months away, Brian. More polls are showing the Liberals are still hurting.
They are. I mean, the latest poll is from Nanos, and Nanos has been a laggard in showing a drop for the Liberals, but they've now got them about 4 points back. I believe the numbers are 35 for the Conservatives, 31 for the Liberals. That is significant because under that scenario, we're probably looking at Conservatives normally get a point or two above what the polls claim. So we're looking at 36, 37% popular vote for the Conservatives. Depending on where those votes fall, could be a minority for Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives, could be a minority for Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives. But either way, it shows that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, at this point, were an election called today, very unlikely to actually take the majority of the seats or even close to it. And all of that goes back to SNC Lavalin. It goes back to the Norman trial. It goes back to gun issues. And their push to try and bring in a gun ban under odd circumstances just ahead of an election. So there's a lot of things happening in the background, and all of that is leading to an erosion of Liberal support.
Even if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau does not win the most seats, Green Party leader Elizabeth May still wants Trudeau to be Prime Minister.
Yeah, and I don't know how this helps or how, because people that are going to be voting Green, they're voting Green because they want change. They're voting Green because they want real action on the environment, hardcore action on the environment. Now, you and I may disagree with Justin Trudeau and how he's handled the environment. Maybe you think he's gone too far. Maybe you think he's not gone far enough. But the Green voters definitely think he has not gone far enough. And so for Elizabeth May to say, better to vote for him and keep him in power than do anything with Andrew Scheer, that hurts her credibility. And I really don't understand why she would be doing that. But it shows that for her, it's more about symbolism than about real action.
And I'm thinking to myself, if you're a federal party leader, won't you want to become Prime Minister? Instead of saying we should support another party?
I don't think that's going to be happening for the federal Greens anytime soon. As close as it came for the Greens in Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, I don't think it's going to be happening for the Feds anytime soon.
One of our regular contributors, Brian Lilley, joining me once again from Toronto. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you, Hal.